All right, good evening, everyone. It is officially that time. We are going to go ahead and get started. Don't fret, though. If you have friends that are still trying to get on the call, go ahead and shoot them a text. Let them know we are starting and have them hop on with us. Again, I'm Jennifer Epps Addison. I'm the president and co-executive director of the Center for Popular Democracy. Let me first start by thanking everyone who is committing to the resistance by being on the call tonight for this incredible action briefing, as well as a great training on the People's Day of Action on Tuesday. Let me first just welcome some folks to the call. Let me thank everybody who's been involved with the call. We've got some great presenters for you tonight, including Paola Mendoza, one of the co-organizers of the Women's March. So welcome all of the women's marchers that are out there. I want to thank all of the members of CPD, all of the folks at Move On, National People's Action, as well as the Working Families Party members who are on the call tonight. And what an incredible and impactful week we all have had together. I don't know about you, but sitting back, this week, getting in the streets, seeing on Facebook my brothers and sisters from across the country stand up in resistance and demand a stop, a pushback to this incredibly hateful agenda that's being moved by this administration. And the best part about it is that it's working. For folks who haven't seen, we now see key Republican figures who are starting to back away from the idea of repealing Obamacare, including former Speaker John Boehner, who said that Republicans probably will not repeal the Affordable Care Act. We're winning so bad that additional GOP members in the House are also saying that repeal is not likely to happen. For example, Brooks in Alabama. But we know that we can't let up. We've got to keep the pressure up, and I don't have to tell y'all that because y'all have been in the streets and in town halls and outside of members of Congress's office delivering petitions, making your voice heard. I think we have to make sure, and I know that you all are, that our message to the Democrats is we cannot give an inch. We have to resist this agenda at every place and point we can. More than 1 million people across this country have visited the collaborative website, resistancerecess.com, in less than a week since it was talked about on Good Morning America. In fact, we've seen more than 600 events across the country and more than 100,000 people mobilizing, participating, and taking action. This truly is what democracy looks like. And of course, we've all gotten some great viral memes on Twitter and Facebook. Some of my favorite have come out of Arkansas, which is the birthplace of my grandmother. And I think you are onto something when even a child knows that you should not try to cut PBS in order to build a xenophobic and hateful wall. So check out all of those memes and share us on social media. Keep sharing them around. Keep lifting people's spirits. But remember that we are in a marathon and not a sprint. And so whatever gives you resilience and joy, whatever helps you get through the day, we want to make sure that you are taking the time to take a breath. Maybe if you need to get off of social media, or for those of you where it actually is healing, get more social media. Laugh as much as possible. Actually, next week, we want to encourage folks to join us on, not next week, but on March 12th. On March 12th, we're going to have Mark Anthony Johnson, who's the Director of Health and Wellness at Dignity and Power Now. And Mark Anthony is actually going to lead us through a resistance resilience training to help us all get through the long nights of protest and demonstration. All right, so let's talk about logistics for the call, and then we're going to dive right in. And I'm really excited because the very first thing we're going to be doing on this call is actually hearing from y'all and hearing about your success stories. So you can follow along with our slide presentation online at moveon.org/ready-to-resist. You can also stream the call live at that site. And that's where you will be able to access the slide presentation and the audio recording of the call after a few hours. If you'd like to get a text message with the link, you can press *8 now. So again, if you'd like the link to the audio of this call, press *8 now. If you attended a Resistance Recess event and you have a 30-second story that you'd like to share, you can press *3, and one of our volunteer screeners will work to get to you. So again, with more than 30,000 people on this call tonight, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to hear everybody's story. One way you can ensure to spread the word about your successes is you can actually tweet using the hashtag #ResistanceRecess and share your story that way. But if you do have a 30-second success story that you'd like to share with the rest of the folks on the call, again, press *3, and a volunteer screener will work on trying to get to you. And as always, we like to say, let's take notes and generate and spark our ideas so our speakers and trainers have so much good knowledge. You're in for a real treat with the folks we have on this call. I know you're going to want to jot some things down, so make sure you have a pen and paper handy, or you can take notes on your laptop. Okay, so at this time, again, press *3 if you attended a town hall and you'd like to share a 30-second inspiring story from the call. And I'm going to actually introduce a shining star in her own right, Victoria Kaplan, the organizing director at MoveOn.org. And Vicki's going to model for us what a 30-second report back can look like. So everybody pay attention, make sure you're modeling, and we can get to as many folks as possible. With that, let me ask Vicki, will you take us away with a great model for a report back?
I would love to. Okay, here's my story. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here tonight with you. Here's my story. I attended a town hall meeting with Senator Ed Markey here in Western Massachusetts this past Thursday. Senator Markey's staff announced that because of the surge in constituent activity in the last month in our area, we had been visiting his Springfield office every Tuesday, like many of you have been doing and supporting, that because of that, the senator would host a town hall in our part of the state. This was victory number one. He booked a space that would seat 600 people. We knew there would be more, so we encouraged the senator's office to book overflow space. They did. 1,000 more people came. That was victory number two. All of the local media was there, reporting with the story that voters want Senator Markey to resist Trump at every turn. We considered that victory number three. And I'll tell you, I was disappointed in Senator Markey's response to the question that I got to personally ask to him. I asked Senator Markey to publicly support an important bill here in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Safe Communities Act, which would protect immigrants and prevent state police from turning people over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Unfortunately, Senator Markey didn't answer my question, but his state policy director did approach me after the town hall meeting to invite me and other local advocates to a meeting to discuss the bill. I'm also working on an op-ed that I hope to have published locally or online this week. So with follow-through, I think that we're going to see Senator Markey take a leadership position on this pro-immigrant bill in Massachusetts, which I think will help his hand as he advocates in Washington for the people of my state. And I'm so excited to hear all your stories tonight, too.
Thank you so much, Vicki. Great modeling. All right, so let's dive right in. Again, if you have a story that you'd like to tell about how you're standing up in the resistance and a success story from this past week, please press *3 on your phone. I'm going to start with Mateo Guerrero, who is a volunteer leader at Make the Road New York. Mateo, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me in the call, and it's really exciting that we're all joining to brainstorm collectively what resistance looks like and for our communities and what type of actions we want to take to move forward. As a transgender immigrant guy, this issue is very close to my heart. Everyone should be able to go into the restroom feeling safe, and the withdrawing of protections for transgender students to utilize public restrooms and locker rooms is not only an attack in the ability for us to move in public spaces, but this is also an attack on health and our bodies and our existence. And this is the reason why on February 23rd, last Thursday, we gathered together outside of Stonewall and with hundreds of people to call out the new administration and to show what love looks like on the street, and also to build together in coalitions to continue to brainstorm new plans to continue to resist the administration. And so I want to emphasize that beyond the type of resistance that gets highlighted in newspapers and on the TV, resisting also starts within our own communities and changing the culture and dynamics that have historically divided us. So I want to encourage everyone to ask your local restaurants, local spots, and little stores to continue to make a political statement and continue to support protections for trans and gender nonconforming folks, not only in regards to bathrooms, but providing protection to one another in public spaces.
Thank you so much, Mateo, for that powerful story. And we're going to actually hear more about the rollback in rights for our transgender communities from Paola a little bit later on. But I want to thank you for the rapid response, for getting out in the streets right away, and for standing up and making sure that those folks all across our communities are not paying attention to what the federal government is saying, but instead are building communities of love and support from the ground up. So thank you, Mateo. All right, next we have Julia Gallagher from Michigan People's Campaign. Excited to hear what you have to say, Julia.
Great. Well, thank you very much. As you mentioned, I'm a volunteer with Michigan People's Campaign, which is part of People's Action, and I'm a newbie to organizing since the election, so I've never done anything like this. But we are off to a good start here. During the recess, we held 10 events in 5 Republican-held congressional districts here in Michigan, but our focus is the 11th district. My representative, Dave Trott, strictly adheres to the Republican agenda, but apparently he's afraid of his constituents. It's been 688 days and counting since he had a public meeting, so we've given him a new label, Chicken Trot. And while we have not gotten an in-person meeting by following the prescribed steps, we have been successful in making our voices heard by doing weekly actions. So while our congressman spent his recess in India, we organized a bunch of events. On Monday, we used the Chicken Trot theme for a banner drop over a major interstate to support health care. Tuesday, a leader wearing a chicken suit led about 160 of us to request a meeting at the congressman's office. Not only were we refused, but the police came and threatened us with trespassing. But we got it on video, posted it on Facebook, and it's gone viral with over 160,000 views. Then on Wednesday, we had an interfaith march from a church to a mosque. And the highlight of the week was a Thursday night town hall when a live chicken served as a stand-in for Congressman Trott at the Shadow Town Hall, and it was attended by 220 people to support immigrants. So our press coverage this week has been excellent with local TV and newspaper stories, news, radio, and NPR. And the icing on the cake was an editorial in the Detroit Free Press that urged Congressman Trott to meet with his constituents. So we have events planned for the coming week to push health care and immigration rights, and we're ready to resist like never before. Thank you.
Wow, I love the creativity, and that's exactly what this resistance is about. It's about finding the ways that you can plug in, and the fact that you're a first-time activist in this way, and that you were able to find creative ways to push back and to raise your voice is just so incredibly exciting to me. So thank you so much for your participation and for your action. And Julia, we also have on the call, just so folks know, someone in Michigan who is wondering if the organizations who are on the call have a local chapter where they can volunteer. So Brian in Sterling Heights, Michigan. Julia is with a local chapter of People's Action, and we'll make sure, again, that you can find the contact information for folks on the call, as well as where you can plug in and get involved on the slides. All right, let's go to another caller. Let me just get my notes. Who is next? Aha, all right. Oh, we're going all the way over to Vermont. Some of us are pretty excited about things that come out of Vermont, and I'm not just talking about maple syrup. Brenda Patuan I think I got that right. I practiced it, but I think I got it right, is a rights and democracy leader in Vermont, and she has a powerful story about healthcare. Brenda?
Yes, thank you so much, Jen. And yes, you did get that right. It's great to be here. So I also wanted to speak a little bit about the power of connecting local resistance groups with newly activated folks. And I'm an example of one of those newly activated folks as well. So Rights and Democracy Vermont recruited me to tell my healthcare story at Bernie's first day of action last month. And we had over 1,000 people packed into a high school auditorium in Little Burlington, Vermont back then. And we've been riding that wave ever since. And it really culminated yesterday with 3 overflowing rallies across the state. So people are really fired up here in Vermont. And, I personally have shared my story now with local TV, with radio, with local press, and I wrote a blog about my journey from being sort of public speaking phobic to a healthcare activist. And that blog was picked up by Bill Moyer's site and featured on their Facebook page and their website. So that was kind of exciting. We're lucky here in Vermont because we have a very supportive congressional delegation, which of course is led by Bernie Sanders himself. So we are focused on pressuring our Republican governor. Right now we're doing that through a postcard campaign to urge him to stand up for Vermonters' health care. Everybody at our rallies yesterday filled out a postcard, and we're going to continue getting those filled out. And then we're going to deliver trunkloads of those cards in a public march to our state house in Montpelier. So I think it's just one example, and it shows what's possible when each of us steps up to play a role here. I mean, I didn't think that I had it in me to do this sort of thing, but here I am, and it feels good. So everybody can do it.
It absolutely feels good. Thank you so much for your leadership, Brenda. And I think it's right. We all have something to contribute because we all care so deeply about this country, and we all know that the values that we were taught to believe in, we're not living up to them right now. Instead, we're seeing an administration who targets communities, who sows the seeds of hate, who creates fear and anxiety in our communities. And so the fact that folks are willing to stand up for the type of country that we're trying to build is probably the most American thing that any of us can do. We have another caller, Lisa Clark, who is from Colorado, who's going to tell her success story for this week.
Thank you, Jen. So I'm with Together We Will Colorado, and we started a campaign with Indivisible Front Range and Katie Farnan, some other indivisible groups around Colorado, and some groups from Colorado Action Network. And we actually started a letter writing campaign back on January 30th, reaching out to Cory Gardner and also some of our other MOCs around the state requesting town halls for recess. We got some positive response from certain MOCs, but Cory Gardner refused to give out his schedule, still refuses to give out his schedule. So we held multiple town halls around the state for him. There was one in Fort Collins. There was one in Pueblo. The largest was Friday night in Denver. And it was a huge cooperative effort between all these groups. We had a cardboard cutout of Senator Gardner that people could walk up to and ask questions, have their photo taken with Cardboard Cory, and it worked out really well. It was actually really organized, really well done. I think that it was a very positive event, and the one thing that I really took away from this was, none of us have any experience in doing this sort of organizing, but I think when you reach out and you work together cooperatively, no matter what organization or group you're with, you can really do amazing things. So to me, that was really inspiring, and I hope that we all get to work together again soon.
Thank you, Lisa. And let's do a quick poll, folks, just to kind of take the temperature in the room. So if, I guess really not in the room, it's in the country. So let's see, did you participate in a Resistance Recess Town Hall event? If you did, press 1, and press 2 if you didn't. So again, did you participate in a Resistance Recess Town Hall event? Press 1 if yes, press 2 if no. Okay, well, how exciting is this is when we can connect some folks who are doing work to hold the same member of Congress accountable, who may or may not even know each other. So I see Kenneth Nova, who also participated in town halls and spoke with the staff of Senator Cory Gardner. And so let's ask Kenneth to share a little bit about what he was doing. Kenneth?
Hi. This is Kenneth Nova from Boulder, Colorado. And what we did is on Tuesday, we have been doing every week at noon, we've been doing rallies right next to Cory Gardner's office. Cory Gardner is a Republican senator from Colorado. And this particular week, just this last Tuesday, we went in before the rally with a delegation and we asked a set of questions to Gardner's staff, and they were questions about a whole range, all the issues that we've all been dealing with throughout these weeks. And we got answers from him. Sometimes the answer was the senator has no statement about that, and sometimes it was one of the typical sort of evasive non-answers that you get these days from a lot of the Republicans. At any rate, we took that information down, and we had 400 or 500 people gathered in this park right next to Cory Gardner's office, and we proceeded to have a constituent town hall. Well, of course, the senator did not accept our invitation to come, so inspired by Saturday Night Live, we had a woman playing Cory Gardner, and she strolled onto the stage, and we proceeded to ask our fake Cory Gardner questions, the same questions that we just asked his staff. And in many cases we got, she was really terrific at these silly answers that had nothing to do with what the question was. For example, asking about the Affordable Care Act, and her answer was, oh, we have very good health care in Congress, and things like that. So then after she made her statement, we had a reality interpreter, which was me, and I had been in the meeting just before that, and I told everybody what the answers had been from Gardner's staff. And we proceeded through the town hall like that, and it was very well received, and people really had a good time with it. It's good and important to do some laughter about all these grim things that are happening. And then we had the same town hall in Boulder, Colorado yesterday. We had a sunny but cold morning, and we had nearly 1,000 people show, and we did the same thing, the same town hall with our pretend Cory Gardner.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. 1,000 people, that's incredible.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to the next caller, but I want to thank you so much for what you're doing. And I think you and Lisa should try to find each other if you don't already know each other. Really great work happening in the resistance in Colorado. Thank you again, Kenneth. All right, we're going to take one more caller, and then we're going to hear from Paola from the Women's March. So Priscilla from Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania. You have a story about an action you took. Priscilla?
Yes, we've been visiting repeatedly the office of Brian Fitzpatrick from the 8th District for Bucks County and Pennsylvania to ask for town hall. At one point we had 75 trying to cram in his little local office, and we got non-answers saying Washington schedules him, we can't promise anything. And then all of a sudden he held a phone town hall, which was not what we were asking for. and had loaded questions, except for one. Person was very vehement, as I am, about the Russian connection of Trump since long before the election, in fact, during the time when Putin was hacking our election process. The business connections, the political connections. And his answer was the Intelligence Committee of the House is investigating that. And I said, that's not good enough. We need an independent, bipartisan commission for both the House and the Senate. How do we bring this about when they're ignoring our requests?
Thank you, Priscilla. Great question, which hopefully we can talk a little bit more about in our Q&A section. But I think, it's an interesting time, but this call and this demand for transparency and accountability, I think, cannot be more important. We're taking many, I would say, giant leaps towards totalitarian government and fascism, and this call for independent and transparent investigation into this administration's ties to Russia is incredibly important. So thank you for what you're doing. So I want to, before we move on to hear from the folks with the Women's March, I just want to thank all of the volunteers with the new Town Hall Project who found and organized data so that tens of thousands of us could participate in action this past week. Thank you also to Daily Kos and to the dozens of partners behind the Resistance Recess, and more than 100,000 of you and your neighbors, family, and friends from across the country who took action this week. I'm just in awe of what you all are willing to do to stand up and protect our country. And speaking of somebody with a little bit of experience moving tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people into action, I want to introduce Paola Mendoza, who was one of the national organizers behind the historic Women's March on Washington and the artistic director of the march. Paola lives in Brooklyn and is here to give us our political update for this week. Paola?
Good evening, everyone. I am also in awe of what you all are accomplishing and so inspired, and I first and foremost want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because as I was reading and seeing all of the videos around the town halls, it was inspiration and it was strength to keep on going. So thank you so much. Over at the Women's March, one of the central pillars of what we were doing and our philosophy was to uplift the most marginalized communities and making sure that those marginalized communities were at the center of what we were pushing forth, because we believe that when you uplift the most marginalized communities and put them at the center, then everyone inevitably rises when they rise. And so keeping that in mind, unfortunately, this past week, Trump came for one of the most vulnerable communities in this country, and that is the trans community and the gender nonconforming community. And he attacked them in a way that we knew that he was going to attack them, and because of that, we need to stand strong with them and say that we will put our bodies on the line for them. The Trump administration on Wednesday revoked the federal guidelines that specified that transgender students have the right to use public school restrooms that match their gender identity. Sessions wrote that the Department of Justice remains committed to the, quote, proper interpretation of the anti-discrimination law known as Title IX, but said deference should be given to lawmakers and localities. So we know what that means. We know what states' right means. It means separate schools. It means sitting in the back of the bus. It means water hoses and bites from police dogs. I think Laverne Cox said it best when she said, these bathroom laws are about whether trans people have the right to exist in public space. It's not a states' rights issue. It's a civil rights issue. And because it's a civil rights issue, we need you all to continue to fight and stand in resistance the way that you all did for this past town halls. week, we need you to stand with our brothers and sisters from the trans community. And I have 3 things that you can do in order to stand with them. The first one is very simple in the sense that you just need to support trans families and trans people by donating your time and donating money and resources to local LGBTQIA grassroots organizing groups that are in your community. So just do a quick Google search, find out what's there, make a call, donate money, or go and volunteer. They are in need of your help. The second action is to call the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights, the OCR, and the telephone number, and this is also in the slides. So don't worry if you don't have a pen and paper right now, you can just go back to the slides, but I will say the number slowly. The telephone number is 1-800-421-3481, or you can email ocr@ed.gov, and you can report Betsy DeVos for discriminating against trans and gender nonconforming youth. And the last thing that you can do is you can go to www.glsen, so I'll say it again, glsen.org. And there you can find some sample legislation that you can pass on a local level to ensure equality for transgender folks in your community. Again, we all know that politics are local, so if we need you to start locally to protect the trans community. And the second community that is being attacked by the Trump administration is the immigrant community, in particular the undocumented immigrant community. We were all aware and we had heard of the executive order that Trump passed where he said that he was going to put up his wall on the southern border. And that was reported on very heavily, but what was not reported on as much was some very nefarious points in that executive order. Some of those nefarious and very scary points in the executive order called for the instructed the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is ICE, to build a sprawling network of immigration detention centers. And then a White House memo to top Homeland Security officials called for raising the number of immigrant ICE incarcerations to 80,000 people a day. So I just want you guys to think about that the goal of ICE is to detain 80,000 people a day. And that's men, women, and children that are going to be detained in a detention center on U.S. soil. It's unprecedented that we are expanding our criminal detention centers in such a way. We're going to be spending an additional $2 billion in government spending per year in order to incarcerate that many people. Again, this is connected to the private industrial prison complex and how much money they are making. And so in order to, there's again a few things that we are asking you to do in order to protect the undocumented community, because as you also have heard of and are well aware of, I'm sure, is all of the raids that have been going on across the country. Again, so in that executive order, Donald Trump criminalized just regular undocumented immigrants, and he claims that ICE is targeting quote-unquote criminals, but in the past 2 weeks he has detained, or ICE has detained, 3 recipients of DACA who have the legal right at this moment to be here in this country. He has also detained a young woman that had a brain tumor and she was in the hospital. ICE agents went into the hospital and detained her. They've detained parents, mothers, and fathers, and that are not criminals. And so we're asking you to support the immigrant community by doing 3 simple things. The first one is very simple. You can call your congressmen and women and ask them to not support private prisons. The second thing that we're asking you to do, again, very simple, is to continue to use the hashtag on social media, which is no ban, no walls, no raids, and share stories around and opinions and express your rage around that hashtag, because as we all know, Trump follows Twitter quite closely. And also, sanctuary cities are crucial in our fight to protect immigrant communities. Sanctuary cities and sanctuary campuses and sanctuary churches. So there's an amazing organization that is focusing on creating and implementing as many sanctuary cities as possible and going through the process on a local level to create sanctuary cities. So go visit their website. It's very simple, and you can get involved again on your local level to, if your city is not a sanctuary city, start the process for it to become a sanctuary city. The website, this is on the slides as well, but nonetheless, is www.lahuelga, which is LAHUELGA.com/sanctuary. So www.lahuelga.com/sanctuary, and you can get more information on how to make your city and your campuses sanctuary cities and campuses. And then the last thing is for anyone that might be an immigrant on this call, undocumented immigrant in particular, or if you know of anyone that is an undocumented immigrant, there's an amazing resource out there that lists very clearly all of your rights, answers a lot of questions. It's just a great website. It's called www.informedimmigrant.com, informedimmigrant.com. So just share that with your networks to make sure that if anyone needs any information, that they can go ahead and get it. The last thing that I want to share with you is what the Women's March is doing next. We have announced our general strike, A Day Without a Woman, which is happening on March 8th. Our general strike is in standing on the shoulders and in homage of strikes that have come before us. The United Farm Workers strike with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, obviously the bus boycott strike, and most recently in Poland there was a strike for women's reproductive rights where 1 million women struck and went out and protested in order to maintain their reproductive rights. And so in their honor and in homage to them, we are asking for a general strike, A Day Without a Woman, and we are asking three things. We are asking for those that are able to not go to work, to not go to work, to show the country how important and central we are to the foundation, the success of this country. So if you're able to not go to work without jeopardizing your job, then please don't go to work. If you must go to work, then we're asking you to please wear red in solidarity with those that are striking. And the last thing that we're asking you to do is to not spend money that day, unless you're going to spend money at women-owned businesses or small businesses, again, to show our economic power and to show that we are united. If you want more information about the general strike, you can go to our website, which is womensmarch.com/Women's Day, womensmarch.com/Women's Day to get more information about the strike. And lastly, if you want something specific, if you have an idea, or if you want to talk about how to get your company involved in supporting the strike, meaning that you would want to make sure that your employees don't go to work, you can write us at Reshma. Her email is Reshma, RESHMA, @womensmarch.com. Reshma@womensmarch.com. You can write her with inquiries about the strike, and she will get back to you as soon as possible. I know that this is a lot that we're asking for. We're asking you to stand in solidarity and put your body on the lines for trans community. We're asking you to put your body on the lines and stand in solidarity with the immigrant community. And we're asking you to sacrifice your work, your payday in order to, again, stand with the resistance. It's a lot, but it's the times the times are calling us for us to do a lot, and it is only when we continue to put our bodies on the line and continue to make sacrifices that the resistance will remain strong and continue to grow and make sure to begin to and continue to create the world and the country that we want. So I want to thank you again for all that you're doing, and I want to thank you in advance for all that you will be doing in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Paola. I wish I had some sound effects so I could, have a thunderous applause for you and for all you're doing. And, not just you, but for all of the women across this country who are demanding to show up differently in this world and in this space, for all of the women across this country who refuse to keep quiet as, our commander-in-chief is a person who brags about sexual assault, to stand up for the broad diversity in women, for an intersectional approach to feminism and to fighting back and to empowering our communities. So thank you so much for what you're doing. All right, folks, we got another poll question for you. The poll that is up right now is, will you contact your member of Congress this week about at least one issue that was discussed on the call tonight? So press 1 if yes, you will be contacting a member of Congress about at least one issue discussed tonight. And press 2 if the answer is no, you won't be talking about anything we were talking about tonight to your member of Congress. Again, the question is, will you be contacting your member of Congress this week about at least one issue that we discussed tonight? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. All right, we got a big jump in folks already, and so far 99% of you say yes, we will contact our member of Congress about at least one issue. So that is very, very exciting to me. I hope it's exciting to you. Keep pressing, keep participating in that poll. So thank you again, Paola, for all of this important information. Again, the slides from our presentations will be available at moveon.org/ready-to-resist after the call. Now, folks might know that Tuesday, 45, as I like to call him, is giving his first address to the full Congress. Also Tuesday, the House Judiciary Committee is voting on whether or not to investigate Trump's ties with Russia. So a number of you in the call-in queue have questions about how we pressure an independent investigation around this administration's ties to the Kremlin. And Tuesday, we have an opportunity to make our voice heard as the Judiciary Committee votes on it. You can call your representatives on Monday and demand they investigate Trump. And while Trump is making his speech, which will be sure to be full of more attacks and more divisive language against fellow Americans, we'll demonstrate that our members of Congress should work for us and not Trump. So I'm really excited to turn it over to a good friend of mine, a shero of mine, Nalini Stamp from the Working Families Party. And Nalini is going to lead us in a training around the People's Address and how to have distributed actions that push back against this administration's agenda. Nalini?
Thanks, Jen, and thanks for everyone who has been on this call and all the amazing stories. I'll get right to it because I know we're getting into the hour. So we have a couple of tactics that we would like to tell you about the People's Address. So we want to make sure that there is a People's Address, right? There's a State of the Union every year except for the inauguration year. It's an address to Congress because the president has already kind of like an inauguration speech, right? So we have come up with this. Well, we haven't come up with this tactic. This tactic is actually a form of popular protest in Latin America, and it's called el cacerolazo, aka the casserole protest. So what's that? It's not a dinner, I promise you. It's not food, but it is a form of popular protest that came from Latin American movements under dictatorships. So what's it have to do with food? Again, casseroles. Well, the tactic is bringing pans, pots, and utensils into town squares across the country. In New York, we decided we wanted to go to Borough Hall, where folks were striking after the bodega strike, after the Muslim ban, where we also had a historical order the day that the JFK protests were happening, right? So we're asking folks to go to your town squares, bring pots, pans, and utensils. And if you can't be outside, whether that's because you're differently abled or just because you have children, you could also take your kids and bang pots and pans outside your window, showing that you're in solidarity with folks in the streets. The last time that this was really popular was in the Quebec student movement. They called it the People's LRAD. People were banging pots and pans on the streets from their homes, and everybody felt like they can participate. Definitely be mindful about your neighbors. and how late your event goes, since the address will go pretty late on the Eastern Coast. And why are we doing this? We're doing this for a couple of reasons. One, it's our version of turning our backs on the president, right? It's saying that President 45, you're not our president. You don't believe in our values. You don't believe in the rights, the fundamental human rights that are laid out, and that you're attacking our communities. Two, there's been a lot of protests that have had rallies and chanting, but what if we give our voices a rest for a little bit? I know, shocker, and bang pots and pans, right? It's a really, really great form of tactic. And three, it brings unity. If you're banging pots and pans with your neighbors in your community and you're dancing in the streets together, it allows to have some sort of relief that isn't just, marching and protesting, although we love that as well. So that's one idea. And we want folks to do this across the country. You can register your people's address at resisthere.org/map. Again, resisthere.org/map. So what if you want to watch the speech? Or if you want to watch the speech and then you want to do an action afterwards, right? It's on the same time across the country. So the idea here is what it would be like to have your own address that was curated online. So we're asking folks that during the speech to tweet your address at #people'saddress. If you can do it on long form on Facebook, short form on Twitter, and we will be looking out for folks at the Working Families Party and sharing your addresses. We also want to just compile some sort of, story or piece about it so that we can show people, like the real people's address, what real people want to see. What real people want to see is the vision for our country. You can also do a Facebook live stream of your address. Just definitely use #people'saddress, #ResistTrumpTuesdays. Imagine if there were people's addresses across the country, people talking to each other online saying, this is what I want to see. This is where I want to be. So definitely check that out. Also, if you're in DC this Tuesday, February 28th, right before Trump addresses a joint session of Congress, a group of organizations and activists, including Move On, Working Families, CPD, the ACLU, Our Revolution, National Nurses United, and Food and Water Watch are going to have a resistance address with speakers describing the society that they want to create as well. You can join live at 6 p.m. on Tuesday at Lafayette Square outside the White House, or watch it stream live at facebook.com/moveon. Following that, during the address, organizations like United We Dream and Showing Up for Racial Justice are going to have a cacerolazo of their own while the address is going on too. Again, to get updates, I know I spoke a little bit fast, but just going to repeat. 1, what's a casserole protest? Bang pots and pans in town squares across the country. 2, if you can't be outside, bang pots and pans from your outside your window. 3, be mindful of your neighbors. Then if you can't do that and if you want to watch the speech, create your own speech of your own, whether that be through Facebook, Twitter, or live stream using #people'saddress and #ResistTrumpTuesdays. And you can text RESIST to 738-674. You can text RESIST to 738-674 to get more updates and to get your local cacerolazo event, and register your event again at resisthere.org/map. So I have a question for you all. So we have a question about if you are going to do this. So press 1. So press 1 if you'll host a people's address. And the question is, will you participate in a people's address this Tuesday? So the first part is 1, if yes, I will host a people's address. 2 is I'll attend a people's address event or bang pots and pans in my neighborhood. 3, I'll live stream the resistance address at facebook.com/moveon. Or 4, I'll share on social media. So again, that's press 1. Excuse me, now my voice is going out. Press 1 if it's yes, I'll host a people's address event. 2, I'll attend a people's address event or bang pots and pans in my neighborhood. 3, I'll live stream the resistance address at facebook.com/moveon. or 4 I'll share on social media.
Thank you so much, Nalini. Again, I really want to, woo! I don't know if anybody else out there in the world could just like scream, chant, cheer, maybe bang on a pot or a pan, getting ready for Tuesday. But, you know, folks really put their everything into planning these actions, into figuring out how to make things different and new and exciting, how to reach more and more people. And I know Nalini has been in at least 3 states in the last 48 hours. So I want to thank you for taking your time to be on this call with all of us. We are going to move to questions and answers, and we got a lot of good questions. I will take some people live, and then I will combine a few questions as well. And I want to, we have a little treat for y'all because Ben Williker, the Washington director of MoveOn.org, is also on the phone to help us with the Q&A. So I'm going to start with somebody who really spoke to me. For those of you who don't know, I'm originally from Wisconsin. I grew up there, and I just recently left about 1.5 years ago. But, you know, always really felt really tied to this multiracial community. And so I know, you know, what it's like to be thinking about and to be in school or be in class or be at work with folks who don't have the same political agenda as I do. And so I want to invite Angie from Big Stone Gap, Virginia, who's got a story about and got a question about how do we stand tall and stand firm when we are surrounded by folks who don't maybe share our point of view. So, Angie, are you there?
Yes.
Hi, Angie. What would you like to share with the folks out in the world today?
I just want to know what I can do more where I am in a cold country, in a place where everybody supports Trump, including basically my entire family. I have gays in my family, and they voted for Trump against their children, their siblings, grandchildren's rights, and I'm trying my best to do everything possible, but it's hard when there's so much hate in this community that I'm in. And
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Angie, for your question, and thank you for sharing. And I'm sure that there are a lot of folks out there on the call tonight who can relate to what you're saying. You know, I have been really inspired by the movement for Black Lives because one of the things that it really is at the foundation of that movement is love. And I think when we approach our communities not with a sense of we want to convince you of something or we want to tell you you're wrong, but instead with a drive that we love our communities and that we want to build and grow them, then the question becomes not who did you vote for and why did you vote for them, but the question becomes what do we want to see happen? What needs to change in our communities? And I would venture to guess that the things that you want to change are probably, many of them are probably the same things that your friends and family in Virginia want to change. And so we have to start to build that resistance from the ground up. What can we do together on a local level so that we can move folks closer to our end goals and to our end values? And the other thing you can do is meet up and hang out with some folks who actually do have the same opinions as you. In fact, I believe near you is a Citizen Action chapter, West Virginia Citizens Action, and I would suggest that you Google them and connect with them and connect with other folks on the ground who are having the same conversations with their friends and family that you want to be having. Okay, I want to remind folks about about Nalini's poll question. So again, as Trump prepares for his first address to Congress, will you participate in a People's Address this Tuesday? Press yes for 1, I will host a People's Address. Press 2 for I will attend a People's Address event or bang pots and pans. Press 3 if you will live stream the Resistance Address at facebook.com/moveon. And press 4 if you will share the Resistance Tuesday action, the People's Address, on social media. Okay, we have a few more minutes for a couple more questions. And looks like we have a great town hall story out of Virginia, so maybe this will help our previous caller, Angela. So Kristen from, let's see, Leavittsville, Virginia, has a town hall story and would love to hear from you. So Kristen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi. Yes, so
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, thank you. I'm a Leavittsville resident, and I'm with Indivisible District 10, and we hosted a citizen-led town hall this last Friday for Representative Comstock. We invited her prior to, and she declined our invitation. But what I want to communicate about what we did, we emphasized civil discourse. We wanted a respectful forum that would educate the public. So we had members of Indivisible research her voting record. I mean, they became scholars on 6 different issues that we broke down into 20-minute segments for the night. So when someone from the audience came up and asked a question, slides were presented on the wall with information on Comstock's voting record, as well as statements. So our kind of fact checker experts just communicated the voting record and then moved on to the next question. So it was a tremendous amount of policy that was shared, and it was just a different model. And I feel that it was incredibly powerful because had Mrs. Comstock been there, she would have controlled the narrative and not volunteered her voting record. She would have controlled the narrative and controlled the information that was shared. But our incredible researchers that are just regular citizens studied for weeks to really understand what her position was on these issues. It was a ticketed event with 150 people. We hired a professional moderator. So it was just a different example, and that's the path that we're taking as an Indivisible group, is to really model grace and civility. We didn't have any signs, so I just want to share that.
Great. Oops, sorry about that, Kristen. Feel free to tweet out the rest of it. I accidentally, I thought you were done, so sorry about that. I think that's a really great point. Really exciting to see how different people are fighting back in this resistance and finding ways to contribute that feel right and whole to them. And the reality is that we're going to need everybody. We're going to need folks who make phone calls. We're going to need folks who write letters. We're going to need folks who go to town halls and folks who, can engage in civil debate. And we absolutely need folks who are willing to engage in civil disobedience, to put their bodies on the line, and to block the extreme agenda that's being enforced on our communities. And so thank you for whatever place you occupy in that resistance ecosystem. Okay, we are going to take our last call before we wrap up tonight, and there's been somebody who has been waiting for quite a while from St. Louis, Missouri. Arlene has a question actually about what we do about Democrats in our states, and how do we push people to stand up for our most progressive values. So Arlene, are you there?
Yes, I am. You hear me?
Hi, Arlene. Tell us. Yes, I can hear you. Tell us your story.
Yeah, well, basically, we're in Missouri. We have a moderate Democrat who's up for re-election in 2 years in the Senate, and we've been having debates within our group, which is called Momentum, as to how hard to push Senator McCaskill on issues where we might not be happy with how she voted, or maybe how much we push her on for example, the Supreme Court nomination. Let's say with regard to the filibuster question, because members of the group are concerned about her about a Republican getting elected and beating her in 2 years. Trump overwhelmingly won Missouri, and our state is now in deep red. We have a The entire state administration is Republican except for one Democrat. They have a Republican supermajority in both the House and the Senate, in the Missouri House and the Missouri Senate, and we have only one, or I think only two U.S. representatives who are not Republicans. So we are really deep red, and we're very concerned, but we also, want to encourage her to vote the right way on certain things. So that's sort of the debate we've been having within our group.
Thank you, Arlene. That is a really great question, and here's what I'll say to that as I close. We have a failure in mobilization on the left. We have a failure in doing the hard work of organizing, and now we're seeing folks, right, in this moment, people who have never taken action before stepping up and standing up and stepping out into this moment and this movement. And I think in this moment, what we have to remember is that we can't just show up to town halls and we can't just be activists on the internet, but we have to build one-on-one connections and relationships to each other. We have to bring back the style of organizing that shows up at people's doors and at their work sites and at their schools, and that connects folks to a community that is all in this for the same reasons: to rebuild our country, to expand economic opportunity, to ensure quality public education for every child, to protect our water and our air, to ensure that our country is a leader in dignity and respect abroad. And that is why we're taking action. So as you take action, hold that with you and talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family, talk to the other parents at your kids' school. Be willing to defend those principles and those values to their core. I wanted to just quick circle back before we end here. Our caller from Virginia, I gave you information about West Virginia Citizen Action, but actually you are in Virginia, and there are two great groups on the ground. Not sure exactly where you're located, but there's Virginia New Majority as well as Virginia Organizing. So again, if you are in a place where you feel isolated, the most important thing you can do is connect to other like-minded people who are going to have your back. So connect with the community organization on the ground and stand up together collectively in action. With that, I want to thank again our incredible trainers and speakers tonight. Thank you to Paola Mendoza from the Women's March and Nalini Stamp from the Working Families Party. And thank you to everyone who was on the call tonight, who stayed for the full hour or stayed as long as you possibly could. And thank you to the 100,000 people across this country who took action and participated in a recess town hall. Have a great night. Stay strong in your resistance, and we look forward to talking with you all again on March 12th.